Welcome, everybody, to the July 25th, 2019 meeting of the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission. The first item on our agenda tonight is for the approval of the June 27th Planning Commission minutes. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Scott and a second by Alma. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is for citizen comments that are not, for items that are not on the agenda tonight. And this is an item that we have on our commission agenda regularly that allows for citizens to be heard for anything that's not on tonight's agenda. So does anyone want to come forward and make any comments? Seeing none, we will move along. A vote to place non-agenda items on the agenda. Are there any non-agenda items that anyone would like to have considered for placement on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we will move along. The next item is for consent agenda. And consent agenda is for items that are listed on our agenda that are deemed by the Planning Commission to be non-controversial, routine in nature, and we will approve those items in one motion. We typically have no discussion on items on the consent agenda. So does anyone on the Planning Commission, the city staff, or in the public wish for us to remove any item for regular consideration? We'll do that now. Anybody have anything you want to pull from the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, point of order, though, I need to recuse myself from item 10 and item 11,
10 and 11?
both items.
Okay.
Probably, can we just move that to the secondary?
Yeah, there's no one on
They're
here.
not.
There's
Okay,
not
they're
one on
non-consent, so,
So,
okay.
That's why I did it that way, because there's not one on here.
Right, so there's just one consent agenda, so, okay. So there's no request to remove anything. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
move for approval. Second.
Motion by Alma and, okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So the next item on the agenda is item number 9. Consideration of ordinance 2019-23, an ordinance to rezone .28 acres from R3 to office residential, OR, for the property located at 1330 Columbia Avenue. So, staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposed rezoning of this property fits with the recommendation of the envisioned Franklin Land Use Plan, which places this lot in the office residential design concept. Envision Franklin recommends any new construction maintain the single-family style of the established residential character of the neighborhood. No corresponding site plan for development of the property has been submitted at this time. Staff recommends favorably to the Board, Mayor, and Alderman.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone in the public like to speak to this item? Come forward now. I see no one. So is there someone representing the applicant on this project? Yes, sir. Can you come to the lectern and tell us your name and address? And
Please excuse my attire, minor family emergency, and I didn't get a chance to change. My name is Daniel Peterson. I owned that property 2 or 3 months ago. The Planning Commission approved a plan to allow a bed and breakfast on the property. You may remember that. Since then, we've decided to move in a different direction and just do a similar plan to what we had proposed, but just for simple office use.
okay. Is there a motion for this item?
Move for approval.
Motion by Scott,
Second.
second by Michael. Is there any discussion? Ann?
There are some things that go with office residential that are not necessarily the same as doing a bed and breakfast. So I'd like to hear some things, particularly about the use of that you know, it's really not even an alley almost. It's not paved, you know, and it goes behind all of the properties that are on Everbright and all the ones that face Battle Avenue. And I've had some people contact me, but also drove out there myself again, and I can really see some difficulties in trying to get on and off the property. And also would like to hear, because I did not check it, what are uses that are in office residential?
I can't recite them just from the top of my head, but it's definitely not retail uses, it's more office space. So I believe,
And I do believe that bed and breakfast is allowed. We did consider that, knowing that they had a bed and breakfast approved originally. So I'm going to verify it right now, but I do believe a bed and breakfast is one of the very few uses permitted in OR. Office, detached residential, probably civic institutional uses, but let me verify it right now.
Okay, and I'm also wondering, you know, how many parking places would there need to be? Because as I say, I see getting on and off of that property more challenging than many other places, even along Columbia Avenue would be.
I believe it's 2 spaces, because this is traditional standards, so 2 spaces for every 1,000 square feet.
So, how many square feet?
The thing that was, well, right now there's a 1,000 square foot house that's there.
Mhm.
The plan that we'll be putting together will actually be almost identical to what's been approved. Well, the plan hasn't been approved, but the plans that we've turned in as far as the style of the addition and the parking area that I've worked with the engineering department and everything on. So it's going to be very similar. The parking spots, the total square footage will be between 3,000 and 3,500 total. And we're imagining that there will likely be a total of 10 parking spots.
Well, I would say having 10 parking places there, as I say, is going to be very problematic. Honestly, I don't know, I mean, I've turned into the alley. I have never tried to come out of the alley onto Columbia Avenue, period. I
We will
just-
certainly look, especially after meeting with you and discussing this, we'll look at the site distance issue coming out of there. And we'll, as the plan evolves, we'll look at that really closely.
Well, I noticed that there was a comment on this, that there would be no access onto, no additional access onto Columbia, but honestly, the house on the other side of the alley has a very tall wooden fence. And that's going to make sight distance, trying to come back out there, very difficult. And the other thing is, I don't know how long the alley is, but there are probably a dozen or more houses that back up to that and that use the alley as just like, you know, to turn into their garage or something like that. And also, it turns out that the school over there or some other part of it has kind of a little, there's a parking lot there, kind of, but it also has little places for like, you know, just a little place for picnics or something like that, it looks like. And so my understanding is that a lot of people that live in that area, the children use that alley to go over to the library, the school, or, you know, there's also a county park over there, right around the library and everything, and courts and things like that too. And so, as I say, the people that live in that area would not have to cross any major street if they could just use the alley to walk on. And as I say, it's an alley that's not did we say, we didn't say 20 feet, did we?
Oh, I'm not sure exactly. It doesn't look very wide.
It's not, and as I say, it's not paved.
It is not paved.
It's not paved, and, I mean, I kind of hated to just drive down it just to go to Academy Street there, but I surely wasn't going to turn around and try to get back out on Columbia Avenue from it. And I did not come at a busy time of the day.
Hmm.
And it looks like the plan shows it's 18 foot of right-of-way with 8-foot gravel road
Yeah, yeah,
on the final plat here.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
It's-
so
it's-
just to confirm what you're saying.
It's not, but it's also not, it's not maintained by the city, as far as we know, right?
It has not been paved by the city, certainly. I'm not sure about the
It's
maintenance
designated
schedule.
unclassified.
That's what I thought. And so, if you have 10 extra cars, and I don't know, for office, generally people don't just come and stay all day, you know, and everything. Having to come out of there or else drive all the way down to the end of it, you know, past all those houses on both sides. I'm just saying there's some concerns.
And I was able to pull up the zoning ordinance for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Office residential uses, the uses allowed there are attached, detached dwellings, charitable, fraternal, and social organizations, essential services, passive parks, offices, bed and breakfast establishments, private and neighborhood recreational facilities, telecommunication towers, and that's it, I believe. And those are all dependent on if they can fit on the site.
Well, as I say, whenever I think about 10 vehicles being there, that is a concern. And how they could get in and out of there.
So there would be 10 vehicles, if it was 5,000 square feet, correct? So it's, because it's 2 vehicles per 1,000 feet, correct? 1,000 square foot. So we'd need 10 only if this was a 5,000 square foot building,
I
correct?
don't believe the parking requirement's exactly 2 per 1,000. It's probably 2 and so many, you know,
Okay.
a fraction of a spot per
Yeah.
1,000 square
Okay.
foot.
Yeah.
And it really depends on the total build out of the square footage.
Okay.
And since we haven't seen any actual plans at
So
this
we're
point,
just
it's
guessing.
really hard to say. We are. I mean, I think realistically, there's definitely going to be somewhere between 6 to 10 parking spaces required. So it's not going to be just 1 or 2. You know, so if that helps in your consideration, I would estimate somewhere in that range.
May I say something? I believe that I was told it was 2.91 parking spots per 1,000 earlier on.
It's 2.85. I just
2.85, okay.
2.85.
Okay, so
And
yeah,
the bed and breakfast plans had, I believe, had 6 or 7 spots. So it
Okay.
was 6 to 8, I can't remember at this point, because just respectfully, Ms. Peterson, like, how do you view the difference in the approved idea of the bed and breakfast versus this, as far as, you know, just the traffic?
well, let me tell you, I did go to the neighborhood meeting on the
Mhm.
bed and breakfast
Yes,
sometime.
ma'am.
However, I had not actually driven down the alley
Okay.
then. And once I did that is the thing that concerned me greatly. And I know that across the street from there are driveways. You know, Columbia Avenue, you know, been around a long time and everything. And so there are some driveways, but the idea of the only way to get in and out of here is through that alley. And as I say, with the sight distance, a driveway that it does go out on Columbia Avenue, you would have better sight distance, turning right or left.
That's certainly something we'll evaluate when the new plan comes in.
So the alley is designated as having a right-of-way, but it's not a publicly, it's not a maintained alley.
It's showing up as public right of
It
way.
is public
Yeah,
right-of-way,
right,
so
right.
it would be, okay. Because I know, I think there was an email from a citizen that expressed concern that there had been some abuses of some people parking and blocking the alleyway and resulting in some problems, so.
Oh, and the other thing is, it can only be, in other words, two vehicles going opposite ways cannot pass each other.
Right,
It is not a standard alley width.
Right.
That's
per our
right, that's
ordinance
right.
Today. No.
And so that could be a problem also. But as you say, I believe I did later on hear about some problems parking out in the alley, which, and as I
Right.
say, I guarantee you, two vehicles could not, pass each other going in,
yeah.
well, either way, not going in opposite directions, but you could not pass each other.
Right. Okay, so this item tonight is just to rezone the property and not to consider what, because you mentioned, you threw out the numbers 3,000 to 3,500 square feet. Is that a total area of and it's an expansion on the existing structure. The existing structure won't come down, will it?
No, not at all.
So you're gonna
It's-
add
it's
on to
been
that.
It's been fully remodeled. It's currently permitted for short-term vacation rental, which it's being used for that right now. The alley, it is a unique situation from the standpoint that the property does not have a driveway
Right.
that comes directly onto Columbia Avenue, and I've been told that's not even an option. So, right now, I mean, you have to turn into the alley, and then you kind of pull over to the left and park next to the house. In the bed and breakfast or in the office scenario, the parking lot is gonna be in the back of the property, so you'll turn off the alley. There will potentially be parking spaces facing in both directions, 62, whatever the standard is. You'll back out and drive right back. There's a lot of people that drive up and down the alley to and from work and come out on Columbia Avenue. There is the Lehus. The Lehus are the only neighbor on the other side of the alley that share the same length as our property. They do have an 8-foot tall fence. The fence is not an issue. The current issue, and I'm gonna speak to Calvin, is the skip whorls that are planted in the right-of-way between Columbia Avenue and his fence. So every now and then, I take some clippers and clip them back a little bit, but I think they're actually probably in the right-of-way, and I may ask him to remove those so the sightline is better.
How are we gonna know what the right-of-way is for that? I mean, I'm not expecting an answer, I'm just saying.
According to the final plat, it's an 18-foot right-of-way.
Well,
There's your measure.
but I'm saying, it's,
So it's platted as 18 feet. What does it belong to? It doesn't belong to the city? It's
It-
a city
it is
right away.
public
It's
right
a
of way.
city
It's
right away.
public,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
but it's not maintained by the city.
Well,
That's my question.
I'm not sure the maintenance schedule on it, but it has not been paved. I don't-
no.
Yeah, it belongs to the
But
city.
it's
but not
public.
maintained.
The city does come out and trim branches, and a tree fell a few months ago, and they came and said they do take care of it, but it is just gravel and weeds.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this item? So we have a motion to approve,
Well, to recommend approval, of
to
course.
recommend approval to
Board of
Bob.
Mayor and Alderman.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Say no.
And Ann says no. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I invite everyone to drive out there.
Okay, item number 10, consideration of ordinance 2019-20, an ordinance to rezone 20.9 acres from general commercial GC district to specific development residential SDR 11.34 district for the property located east of Carruthers Parkway and south of Murfreesboro Road, 250 Rosa Helm Way, 2050 and 2051 of Wood Duck Court. Staff?
Yes, thank you. These three properties are within the Regional Commerce Design Concept. The Regional Commerce Design Concept contains high-intensity centers that attract a large number of people and employers from both within and outside the city. The regional commerce area should transition in intensity and scale across this design concept. In terms of multifamily uses, Envision Franklin states, New multifamily residential is encouraged within regional commerce to create lively, walkable neighborhoods near restaurants, shops, grocery stores, and workplaces. In locations where commercial use on the first floor is not viable, multifamily units should provide individual ground floor entrances, stoops or front porches, and pedestrian connections to the street or to a drive resembling a street. In terms of location, this site is not a viable location for commercial uses. 3 properties are only accessed from a cul-de-sac located off a local road. This site also has stream buffer and floodplain constraints along its frontage. Therefore, multifamily is appropriate as a single use on this site, and staff recommends this favorably to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone from the public wish to speak to this item? Come forward to the lectern and give us your name and address.
Sorry, were you asking for the
Okay.
applicant?
No, it's-
I'm assuming no public comments? Okay, well, go ahead, Greg.
Yes, my name is Greg Gamble, representing the applicant for this rezoning request. The property is currently zoned general commercial, and in Envision Franklin, there are aspects of the guiding policies that encourage a mix of uses, and so this is an excellent opportunity and an excellent example of how we can bring residential within an area of existing non-residential commercial uses and restaurants. The Williamson County Housing Partnership is tirelessly looking for opportunities around Franklin and Williamson County for developments that will offer for sale, buyer-owned opportunities for families who have combined incomes of less than 80% of the Nashville MSA, not Williamson County, not Franklin MSA, but of the Nashville MSA. And we're extremely excited to have this opportunity that will have a major impact to 273 families here in Franklin. Happy to answer any questions that you may have about the rezoning portion.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion for this item?
Move for approval.
Al moves for approval. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any discussion on this item?
I think my things are more on the development plan than
Development
on the
plan, okay.
rezoning.
Okay. No discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next item is item number 11, consideration of resolution 2019-56, a resolution approving a development plan for Wood Duck Court PUD subdivision with one modification of development standards, those of parking requirements, for the property located east of Carruthers Parkway and south of Murfreesboro Road at 250 Rosa Helm Way and 250 and 251 Wood Duck Court. Staff?
Thank you. This development plan proposes 237 multifamily units in 8 buildings across 3 properties. Envision Franklin places these properties in the regional commerce design concept and supports a multifamily use as described in the previous staff report. Further, Envision Franklin supports this less intense type of use as a transition to the established residential uses. In terms of site design, the properties have numerous site constraints, including steeper slopes along the south property lines and floodplain and stream buffers on the north property lines. This leaves a small linear corridor in which to place buildings. Because of this, the plan does not fully meet the intent of Envision Franklin's goal of placing parking to the rear of the property. However, the project attempts to break up the parking areas into smaller nodes and includes formal open spaces and sidewalks adjacent to all buildings. The plan also provides a secondary access point along the northeast limits of the property, connecting to an existing access easement. This connection point will be required to span above the floodplain and provides a secondary access point for emergency services. Transitioning to the adjacent existing neighborhood is a goal of Envision Franklin and a requirement of the zoning ordinance. The plan accomplishes this in 2 ways. The height of the buildings on the easternmost property are a maximum height of 3 stories, as prescribed in Envision Franklin's Interstate Corridor Building Heights Map, found in Appendix G. Also, the plan implements an incompatible land use buffer along the eastern property line as required by the zoning ordinance. This development plan includes 1 modification of standards for the minimum parking requirements. The City of Franklin zoning ordinance table 5-9 requires that the development within conventional development standards areas provides 1.5 parking spaces for any attached dwelling unit with 0 to 1 bedroom. The applicant has requested that this minimum requirement be reduced to 1.4 parking spaces. BOMA approved this exact request on a previous project by the same development team for the Village at West Main development. The applicant has also provided a study showing the current parking demand at the Village of West Main development. The study evaluated the parking at both an AM and PM peak demand time and shows that even with the approved parking reduction, the parking lot is not full. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the modification of standards request and recommends favorably to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone from the public wish to address this item? Seeing none. Greg?
Yes, thank you again. My name is Greg Gamble, and representing this proposal for a development plan for this property. We are proposing a total of 237 for-sale condominiums by the Williamson County Housing Partnership. The Housing Partnership has been working very hard on kind of putting the finances in place for this development. They currently have secured a $300,000 THDA grant. That grant requires that these homes be deed restricted in perpetuity. A covenant, excuse me, is placed on the property. I'm learning the difference now between covenants and deed restrictions. The covenant will be a part of this, requiring that families who meet that threshold of less than 80% of the median income qualify for the purchase. These homes can't be rented. They are owner occupied. We will have a mix of 149 one-bedroom, 88 two-bedroom for-sale condominiums. Amy mentioned a minute ago that we're asking for a modification of standards to reduce the parking count for the one-bedrooms. That is based upon our experience at West Main Street. You'll notice in our report that the parking counts were done during peak hour. That was some direction that we had from our consultant team. We need to count the parking spaces at about 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. So we're going to be providing that information to the board, mayor, and alderman, and I just wanted to clarify that. But what we do know is that even in the evenings, we have an additional 15, 16 parking spaces at West Main Street for those. Now, those are all 100% one bedroom. Here, we're going to have a mixture of 1s and 2s. We're not going to compromise on the parking requirement for the 2 bedrooms. Those will be parked at 2.5 per unit. But the 1 bedrooms, instead of asking 1.5, we're asking for 1.4. You'll notice that I provided you an 11 by 17 handout. This is not new information, but it does highlight some information for you that may be otherwise a little bit difficult to understand in the development plan submittal. The blue that you're seeing on this is the floodway of the stream, Watson's Branch, that flows across the front of this property. The bridge of Wood Duck Court was somewhat constructed in error. The floodway actually goes over the bridge. We're going to take that bridge out in its entirety. We're going to reconstruct the bridge so that it is above the 100-year floodplain. Matter of fact, the finished elevation will be 3 feet above the 100-year floodplain. So is that true that it's above the 500-year floodplain at that point? Yes. Okay, so that connection to Wood Duck is going to be above the 500-year floodplain. And why is that important? Because this purple line that you're seeing on both sides of the stream represents the existing 100-year floodplain. Removing this bridge changes the dynamics of the 100-year floodplain. After development, after construction, this green line that you're seeing here will be the new 100-year floodplain. We're,
It's just because of the new bridge?
one of the reasons,
Oh,
we
one of the
are doing
reasons,
some
okay.
compensations down in some other areas, and Steve Casey, our civil engineer, will be better able to explain that. But what's important to us is that if you're in any one of these buildings, that you have safe access to a public right-of-way even during a 100-year storm event. We need to make sure that that happens. Now, not every single parking space is outside of the 100-year floodplain. Parking is allowed to be in the 100-year floodplain, but we want to make sure that we have safe access, safe routes, fire truck can get in and get out even during those times. So that was critical to this exercise. We do have a secondary access on a platted access easement that goes through Hendricks Automotive's property. We're working with them right now. We might be manipulating the location of that slightly when we come back in with site plan. They've got some development opportunities that they're exploring on their property. We want to be good neighbors and see if we can't work with them for the best outcome on both parties. So a little bit of flexibility potentially in that location. With that, we have our team of experts here with us. Dave Purser, our architect, Steve Casey, and Kevin Blackburn with CEC, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Is there a motion on this item?
Move for approval with and also need to say with, staff's recommended approval modification number 1.
Okay, we'll handle
Need to say
the
that. A
modification in
second?
just a
Okay.
second, so.
So move for approval?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So we'll take up, is there any discussion on the main motion?
I just
at this
had,
point?
Yeah.
one thing that, I do a condition that that floodplain is able to be not in conflict with the buildings.
Okay. Okay, so we'll handle the modification of standards as an additional motion. Is there a motion on the modification of standards then?
I move for approval of the modification standards and want to say something about it.
And I'll
Okay.
second that.
And, okay. Okay, is there discussion on the modification of standards?
Yes, there is. I don't know why they think the peak hours for a residential unit is like from 7 to 8 in the morning and 4:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon, because it needs to be at night, as was stated here. And I'd just like for them to have, use the example of the West End, West Main building. And I've driven out there at night, and I think some other people have too. There's still, I think it's 30 units, and there were maybe around maximum of 30 cars that I saw, so there are a lot more parking places out there. In other words, the 1.4 parking places would be very adequate and everything. But again, I think they said, like 19 during these, but I mean, if you're living somewhere, the peak hours of parking is not going to be, during the day. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I mean,
Are all the West Main condos sold? Are we getting an accurate
There's
count of what's ready?
one available.
One available,
Uh-huh.
okay. You can adjust that on the count then.
And so this modification, just for my clarification, there's no change for the spaces required for the 2-bedroom units.
Correct.
That's 2.5 per unit.
That's correct.
And then it's for the 1-bedroom units that would otherwise be required to have 1.5 spaces. The modification is to allow 1.4
Correct.
spaces. Okay.
and just I'd like to get the new counts before it comes to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Right.
It's the only thing.
Okay.
As I say, it still looked fine, but I didn't like those times that they had in there.
Right. Any other discussion on the motion for the modification of standards? We'll vote on that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Back to the main motion. Additional discussion on the main motion.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was just, that one thing, I would put a condition that 100-year floodplain doesn't interfere with the buildings.
I
'Cause
believe
know
that's
still in
already
the
a
works.
condition of approval.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Thanks.
And
Steve?
I was gonna say, and I had a question about that. I'm happy to hear that changing the bridge there on Wood Duck Court will take care of some things, but I was trying to figure out, how are you gonna cut? You know, I don't know where, I don't know, I mean, I know that that whenever you fill something, you don't necessarily take the cut loam or whatever it is there and use that, but still, I agree. I think the buildings most certainly, and ideally, a lot of the, but the buildings specifically need to be out of the floodplain.
Yes.
Right.
They would be.
And Steve,
So how are you going to manage it, if you don't mind my asking?
Sure, sure. That is something we're going to be working out as we go through the site plan process. But as you can see again from this, the fact that we are filling and essentially pushing the floodplain line closer to the stream will tend to speed up the flow a little bit where it didn't have so far to spread out. That tends to lower the depth a bit, but the biggest thing is that the fact that we're pulling out the culvert there at Wood Duck Court that's currently constricting the floodway. And by opening that up, that reduces that constriction and gives us more capacity to put fill in the floodplain and still be, we're going to be held to have a no-rise condition for the base flood elevation compared to the existing or pre-project condition.
So are you going to have to cut some stuff, though, I mean, the bridge is not going to take care of the whole thing, is it? Or
No,
is it?
it may not. We're still working through the details of that. We are going to see if there are other opportunities to compensate, to cut, to compensate for the fill. We currently have some detention basins located in the floodplain, and there may
Might
be
able to do
more
something
opportunity there,
Okay.
yes, to
There's
cut.
a little bit of difference between doing a no-rise study and the actual H&H, the level of volume, the level of study that we're about to get into.
Yes, the level of study that we're going to get into here is quite a bit. We're going to be going through FEMA, doing a conditional letter of map revision as required by the city and FEMA in this case to do this kind of change. And the fact that the current culvert under Wood Duck Court is constricting the floodway, by getting that spread out so we're spanning the floodway, we're at the end of this, both accesses are going to be spanning what should be kept free, the floodway. So, but this process of doing all of this is quite robust. We're going to be doing a lot of hydraulic modeling and coordinating with FEMA on this to prove a no-rise condition over existing conditions. So.
and Steve or Greg, the secondary access road that comes in, that'll be constructed as part of the overall project.
It will.
And it will include a culvert that's sized
Yes,
in accordance with.
we've done some preliminary modeling of that and are still working through a configuration that will produce the no-rise. And part of the other variable at play there is the location. This is probably as far upstream as we will have it, but we might be pulling it further downstream, which would actually help us because the floodway is a bit narrower as we move downstream.
You almost can't see it. I mean, the way that it's there
Yeah.
right now.
Right,
You sit on one side, not the other,
Yeah,
right.
okay.
That's right.
which is kind of scary.
Okay, any other questions for? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, the main motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Great. Okay, the next item. Taking a nap. All right. Okay, the next item on our agenda is item number 15, consideration of resolution 2019-67, a resolution to adopt an amendment to the 2016 Comprehensive Transportation Network Plan, the Major Thoroughfare Plan, an amendment related to the connectivity between Goose Creek Bypass and Lewisburg Pike near McLemore Road. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Comprehensive Transportation Network Plan was initially adopted on August 25th, 2016. City staff has worked with the Southbrook Development Team to make proposed modifications to the Comprehensive Transportation Network Plan to accommodate both our long-term growth within the city and the proposed development. Below is a list of the proposed modifications. Number one, staff worked with the developer to realign Project 91 McLemore Road, Goose Creek Bypass to Lewisburg Pike. Project 91 will be able to provide the connectivity necessary between Goose Creek Bypass and Lewisburg Pike, allowing us to remove Project 82, Snowbird Hollow Road, Goose Creek Bypass to Lewisburg Pike. Number two, staff also removed Project 85, McLemore Road Extension, Lewisburg Pike to Lewisburg Pike, and we're looking at future roadway plans within the area to accommodate the future growth. Staff will present other opportunities within this area of the city in the near future to the Board of Mayor and Alderman and Planning Commission. This modification to the Comprehensive Transportation Network Plan is required prior to allowing the Board of Mayor and Alderman to approve the proposed Southbrook Development Plan. Staff recommends approval of Resolution 2019-67 contingent upon any changes by our law department.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone from the public wish to address this item? Seeing none, I guess the staff is the applicant for this item, right?
Correct.
Okay. I assume there are no further comments from staff at this point. Is there a motion for this item?
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion by Michael and second by Scott. Okay. Is there any discussion on this item?
I happen to think after I got to really look at this better, whenever we heard this, when we heard the proposal for all the things along Lewisburg to be, to come in, somebody there spoke about Snowbird and said that they wanted it to go through their property or something like that. But we're taking that out, right?
Well, it'll be taken, it won't be a collector road necessarily. There'll still be local roadway connections through there, and Southbrook actually shows a stub connection towards that gentleman's property. If he wishes to develop, would require to extend connections as well. So it's more of the minor collector aspect of things for our connections through here that we're moving around a little bit and changing.
And this is much better than
It's-
the original things.
It's
on
certainly
the-
much easier to construct.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, any other business before us tonight? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is that Scott?
Second.
And second by Michael. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned.